I did start recording. It says it right there. Recording. Well, hello there, everybody. Happy October, Shocktober Halloween season. Halloween weekend is upon us. Hopefully I'll get this posted by Halloween. Special November episode of Halloween monster movies. We're going to hope not. We are still going through the Universal Classic Monsters Complete Collection. This year, Halloween focusing on Dracula, the Complete Legacy Collection. And that brings us to Son of Dracula. Okay, I'm going to do this is going to be, let you know, spoiler warning. I'm going to talk about the movie. If you haven't watched any of the other ones, you know I just talk about the movie. I'm going to do the same in this one. Count Alucard, which is Dracula spelled backwards. I know I had some, I was all like, what is the Leska got to do with it? Last episode, I was like, it's not Nebraska, it's not Nebraska spelled backwards. But the son of Dracula is called Count Alucard. Dr. Acula. No, that's a different movie. But Count Alucard, the son of the famous Transylvanian vampire, travels to the U.S. to satisfy his unquenchable thirst for human blood. Which I wasn't going to IMDb this time, but now I'm going to. I'm going to do it, I guess. IMDb.com. What do you have to show me today, son of Dracula? Son of Dracula. The horror that is Dracula returns. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Alright, so starring Louise Albritton as Catherine Caldwell, Evelyn Ankers as Claire Caldwell. This is the first time we've seen Evelyn Ankers, but she's actually, it's like her third or fourth Universal Monster movie, because she's already done The Wolfman and Ghost of Frankenstein, and maybe The Invisible Man Returns before this point. I thought she was going to be the Invisible Woman. I thought that was the same actress, but apparently I'm mistaken. Did I say that Evelyn Ankers was in Hold That Ghost? Abbott Costello, Hold That Ghost? Another great Universal movie. Well, she is. I think it's Hold That Ghost and not Whodunit. Oh. Fact check! Okay. Robert Page as Frank Stanley. Samuel L. Hines as Judge Simmons. Adeline de Walt Reynolds as Madame Zumba. Anybody else of note? J. Edward Bomberg as Professor Laszlo, doing a cheap imitation of Van Helsing. That's right, I said it. And I think that's all of the cast we're going to talk about right now. No! How could I forget the son himself, the son of a Dracula himself, Lon Chaney Jr. in his one and only Dracula role. Which, if you see the movie, you might be able to know why this was his one and only Dracula role. Although it is to be said that any other film appearance in the Universal Monster Classic movies of Dracula also stars the Wolfman. And Lon Chaney Jr. was very proud of the fact that he was the only one who did the Wolfman. I think at this point he had been, so he did the Wolfman and then did the Mummy and the Frankenstein and then now Dracula. But he's the only actor to have done the Wolfman, and he was very proud of that fact. So probably given the choice of the two, he would probably go with Lawrence Talbot, aka the Wolfman, which he is absolutely brilliant in. What he is not brilliant in as being Count Dracula. is too sympathetic of a character. His vocal tonations and his style play better for a man tortured than a suave evil force that is going to go kill people. And then, like, his first shot, turns around to the camera and looks at it and goes, it is me, Lon Chaney. And at this point, they had dropped the junior because everyone knew the first Lon Chaney was dead and he had come into his own. So people knew who he was. And they didn't need to clarify that he was Lon Chaney Jr. anymore. Screenplay by Eric Taylor. Original story by Curtis Siodmak. Directed by Robert Siodmak. Oh no, I was wrong. It still says Lon Chaney Jr. as Dracula. As Count Dracula. At least on here. I don't know what it said on the credits at this point. We love those clippy clackety sounds, don't we? Where was I? The beginning of the movie starts with luggage being delivered to the train station. There's people there to pick up luggage. They know Dr. Alucard is coming to visit the Caldwells because Catherine Caldwell fell in love with... Didn't fall in love with Dracula. Found Dracula over there in Europe someplace and invited him over. Got into a spell. We're made to believe that she got into a spell and that she wanted to invite him over to her place. And they had this big evil plan marched. Sorry if you can hear the background noise there. I'm just going to put that in there. Not much I can do about that. Although, I think the last time it didn't pick it up. I could be wrong. Could be there. Anyway, so the luggage says Alucard on it, but the way it's spelled, it's like sideways. So there's this Dr. Harry Brewster, Frank Craven, he looks at it and he comes at it from the opposite end. So, of course, he reads it as Dracula, and he's all like, And so they spell it out right at the beginning, just so people know. The people aren't confused, wait, I thought we were seeing Dracula. Who's this Alucard person? Although I'm sure there were people out there who are like, Alucard is Dracula? Possibly. I bet kids maybe felt that way. I could see that happening. I think with all the promotional work and all of the stuff, you pretty much knew that Lon Chaney was Dracula. Basically, Dracula comes, kills her dad. The will comes out to have been changed so that the one daughter, played by Evelyn Ankers, gets all the money and material sources, and all that Catherine gets is the house and the plantation land itself. So she quickly fires all the staff. The staff quickly disappear. We hope that they got let go and they've gone off to other jobs, and not that Dracula has gone around and killed them all. There is one thing to support this later in the movie. I'll mention it. So Catherine is engaged to, what's his name? Will it reach me? Frank Stanley, played by Robert Page. And at the beginning, Frank Stanley seems like he is the Jonathan Harker of The Son of Dracula. And it's just kind of like a write-off role. We don't care. We care about him about as much as we do Jonathan Harker, Juan Harker, or any Harker we've ever seen. It would have been funny if they had just called him Harker. But he's a Stanley. It's not Stan Lee. He's a Stanley. He gets very jealous of the attention she's giving Count Alucard and goes over and basically follows them and loses them. And they get married. So it's another Bride of Dracula situation. And then they go back to the house, and she gets confronted by Stanley, who goes jealously crazy and pulls a gun on Alucard and shoots him. It goes right through him. Doesn't even bother him. But of course, Catherine is standing behind him, so she goes, which was in the trailers for the movie. So I'm not spoiling anything. If it's in the trailers, it's not a spoiler, right? Not necessarily. It's also a 80, no, not quite 80-year-old movie, so you've had your chance to watch it, to know. Well, she dies and becomes a vampire because she's the bride of Dracula. And he's all like, oh, freaking out. Dracula doesn't do anything. Well, he shoves him, right? And he shoots, and girl falls down dead. Dracula stares at him. With his little mustache. And goes, And he goes, and he skitters off, and so Dracula turns into a bat and then follows him into a cemetery and where he collapses on top of a grave, and then the bat lands on his back and is like, I don't, trying to suck his blood through his jacket. I don't know what's going on there, but he's or just checking him to see if he's conscious. But then he flies off, turns back into Lon Chaney Jr., and then Lon Chaney Jr. is going to come and kill him, but clouds come out and there's a full moon. He turns into a werewolf. No, I'm sorry, wrong character, and it shines through this cross, and so the cross symbol goes across Stanley. Alucard, of course, is like, ooh, cross. I've skipped over what is actually a really neat scene where they're like, where is Alucard? We can't find him. He's not sleeping anywhere. Blah blah blah. Because I think at this point, Doctor Brewster is that the name of the kid in Fright Night? You're so cool, Brewster. I don't know if that's right or not. It's been too long since I've seen Fright Night, and that's a crime. Too busy watching the awesome Universal classic monster movies. But I'll have to maybe slate that in for a February show. Happy Valentine's Day. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, Dr. Brewster's kind of already on to Alucard. He's talked to his dollar store, Van Helsing, and so he's kind of looking around for him. They can't find a coffin or body or whatever. So there's this cool scene. There's a lot of preamble to get to this one cool scene where she goes out to the swamp. Catherine goes out to the swamp, and the coffin or the crate of dirt, whatever it is, raises out of the water in the middle of the swamp, and it opens up, or no, smoke. They do a lot of the smoke turning into Lon Chaney in this one, Junior in this one, which isn't perfect, but it looks cool. I think it looks cool. I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, that is real smoke turning into a real person. I'm going to say, hey, that's smoke that becomes animated smoke and then forms into Junior. And I'm going to be like, hey, that's cool. And then he floats above the water of the swamp to the land where Catherine's patiently waiting for him. And it's a very dramatic scene. The music is going, and it's very intense, and the music is going, and it keeps going across the water, and he's just very intense, and it keeps going, and then they're like, anyway, we could speed this up because you've lost all your attention. The thing, he finally gets to the land, and they go off. Oh, there's a gypsy lady. I mentioned her earlier. A gypsy lady from the Wolfman reappears. I believe that's her, Madame Zimba. And she warns Catherine all about, she's going to be a bride of death and she's going to die and she's going to, be a bride of the grave or something like that. Anyway, very creepy, very chilly. So that's that awesome scene. We go back to Frank, goes into Dr. Brewster's place, and he's all like, oh, I killed Catherine. I shot right through Alucard. Oh. You have to believe me. It's like, okay, whatever, take the sedative. I'm going to go check to see what's going on. He goes in the house, walks around the house, can't find anybody in the house, goes down into the basement. There's a big crate in the basement. And next to the crate is a cage full of chickens. Opens up the crate, it's got dirt and feathers in it. So, what I think this is saying is that Alucard Jr., Drac Jr., because he's Lon Chaney Jr. and he's Dracula's son, Drac Jr. has been feeding off of chickens. And the only person to have died so far has been the old lady who has died of a heart attack, I believe. I don't believe there was any blood drained. I believe it was just a heart attack. And then, of course, Catherine, who was shot to death, but she's back to life. Drac Jr. shows up and is like, hey, what are you doing in my house? I got married to this person. This is my house now. So you need to get out of here. And he's all like, well, I heard that Catherine was not well, so I need to see her. So like, oh yeah, sure, come on. So go up to the bedroom where she had been in and it had previously been empty. She is now sitting there looking like a freak. Okay, not like that, but just staring with, she's got the spotlight on her. She's got the supernatural spotlight. It's not just the eyes. They don't do the eye thing in this one. I don't remember it anyway. But they got the supernatural spotlight. And he's like, oh, okay. And they finds out that Frank's been arrested. And he goes down and he's like, no, she's alive. What are you talking about? So the cop's like, okay, well, I need to see this live person. So they go, and then she's not there. She's in her crypt, in her coffin, which is pretty sudden for someone who got shot last night to have a coffin. Planning ahead. It's all part of the plan. So the plan was basically to have this nice plantation house out in the middle of a swamp for peace and quiet for Drac Jr. and his new bride of Catherine. Dracula's main purpose of being here is because America is full of new blood and possibilities. It's a strong nation that he wants to drain dry. No hint of propaganda in there at all. But hey, it's 1946, right? Is that what I said? 1943, there's a war going on. America needs to feel pretty good about itself. People are over there dying and stuff and whatnot. So they see Catherine dead, and they're like, okay, well, this guy did kill her, because there she is. She's obviously dead. Nobody's checking a pulse or anything, but she's lying in a coffin, and her chest isn't moving up and down, so she's obviously dead. Because who would lie in a coffin and hold their breath? Vampires, that's who. So they send Frank to jail, and Dime Store Van Helsing shows up, and they're talking, and there's the another great scene of the movie that also made the trailer is they're talking about Dime Store's given the rules of the vampire and how a vampire operates, and he's like talking about a vampire can turn into smoke and come into any room and surprise their enemies or something like that. And while he's saying that, smoke comes under the door and then up and animated, and it's Drac Jr. He's right there. And he's like, I'm gonna kill you people. And Dime Store's like, no, I may be Dime Store, but I still gotta cross. And Dracula retreats. And they're like, oh my gosh, we need to do something about this guy. He came into my house and uninvited and turned into smoke and tried to kill us, and then turned back into smoke and left. Which I guess is more dramatic than just opening the door and storming out. But then there turns out to be a kid. Drac Jr. does all that, and he goes out and takes a bite out of a kid because the mother brings the kid in. And I was really confused because the mother was the blonde, and I thought it was Evelyn Ankers, who is supposed to be staying with the doctor because Catherine kicked her out of the house. Moving the plot along, Frank's in jail. Catherine shows up in jail and tells him that it was all part of a plan of hers to get Dracula over to the United States, get him to turn her into a vampire, and then she was gonna have Frank kill Dracula, and then she's gonna turn Frank into a vampire, and they can live happily in eternity until ever happily ever after in eternity, being vampires together. And Frank at first is like freaked out about this, but then he's like, okay, he finally, I don't know, succumbs to madness. People come in, she disappears, and he's all like, I'm not talking to anybody in here. I'm just talking to myself. They're like, oh, okay. And they leave, and she reappears, and suddenly he's all in for the plan. And she tells him where Dracula's coffin is, because only two things you can do to kill a vampire, and that's a stake through the heart and sunlight, but also burning his coffin. Or if you burn his coffin, he has nowhere to go to when the sun comes up. So she tells him where the coffin is, helps him escape, which he does. And so, luckily, the guy in charge of watching the jail cells overheard the conversation. So he's able to tell Brewster and Dime Store where to go. So they chase after him. But it's too late. Dracula has decided to move his coffin into a sewage or a drainage ditch for the swamp, I think, which seems, I would say it seems off brand. But looking at Dracula's Shabby Abbey, it's right on brand. Frank gets there and pours gasoline all over the crate and sets it on fire. And Dracula shows up just in time to see it. And instead of like using his supernatural powers or doing anything, he grabs Frank and is like, put it out! Put it out, I tell you! You have to put it out! Which kind of just shows some of the weakness of Lon Chaney's Dracula and just why it didn't. One of the reasons it didn't quite work out was mainly because of the writing. Also, it didn't help out. He's no Bela Lugosi when it comes to Dracula. I'm sorry to say. I am a great fan of Lon Chaney Jr., but as Dracula is concerned, he's no Bela Lugosi. So the sun comes up, I think. I think the sun comes up and he falls and he dies into a big pile of bones. The end. No, we don't leave it off there. So Frank scurries away. The cops and Caldwell and Dime Store show up. They find the burning coffin, and then they look over at the bones and say, look, there is Dracula, Count Alucard. And the cop's like, what? Uh, mm, oh, oh. And then they say, oh, we gotta catch Frank. There's only one place he could be headed for. And I know exactly where it is because she gives them a clue of where her coffin is hiding. And so they go to the mansion, and then there's this playroom that's got a hidden door in it that Frank goes into and goes up to Catherine. And you think they're going to be together forever, but then the cops show up. Brewster and Dime Store are all there, and Frank comes out of the room very sad and walks towards them, and they look in, and her coffin is on fire. Is she in a coffin or is she laying in bed? She has to be in a coffin, right? Because they have to lay in their own dirt. You can't just throw dirt on a bed and call it a day or a night. And that's how the story ends. Bam. The thing that strikes me about Son of Dracula, well, two things. One, that Lon Chaney's performance as Dracula doesn't quite compare. Two, that it's really Frank Stanley's story. I mean, he starts off as the Jonathan Harker character and ends up tragic hero guy of the movie. And by the so at the beginning, you're like, okay, there's this guy, typical whiny, not whiny, but typical bland fiance of the woman that's going to get taken over by Dracula. And then he slowly moves over to vengeful, jealous lover killer, and then into psychotic henchman. Not really henchman, but psychotic lover that's going onto the plan. To uh, dramatic, not dramatic, but oh, what? It's a word I'm thinking of. If you've got a better one, put it in the comments down below. But he becomes this tragic hero. It's just really sad, and he does what he has to do, even though he's killing the love of his life, because they had been like known each other since they were 8 or something like that. And that's how it ends. All right, final thoughts. I This is my least favorite Dracula movie so far. They do some weird stuff. One, Lon Chaney, as great as he is just not a good fit for Dracula. How many more times can I say that? Probably 5,100. Yeah, 1,500's a word. Number. Both. The fact that they moved it from Europe or England to America doesn't necessarily help the story. I mean, I guess it's kind of interesting. I don't know. They also do this thing where they know that Dracula is a legend at this point. There's actually the Dracula novel. At one point, Brewster is reading Dracula, the novel, and they make it seem like the contents of, well, especially the first movie, they don't like talk about Dracula's daughter, but it's not like they're saying Dracula's daughter didn't exist. There's no erasing or retcon or whatever. It makes it seem like the first movie happened, like at the turn of the century or even earlier, kind of thing. I think it's supposed to take place at the turn of the century. The novel was contemporary to when Bram Stoker wrote it. And I don't feel that way when I watch the first Dracula. I feel like it's 1931. And even though this is 46, 43, it just doesn't click as being that long ago. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if next time I watch Dracula, I will try and focus and see, hey, is this 1890s or 1931? Because I guess I didn't pay any attention. It just felt like 1931 to me. It's all in the past. That's Son of Dracula. And it's Halloween, everybody. I still found the movie very watchable. Just not my favorite so far of them. And we've just got one more Dracula movie, House of Dracula, to watch. But there's 2 more besides that star Dracula, which is House of Frankenstein and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So at this point, I'm going to have to do a double feature of House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, and then just put those into one, and maybe just a brief one on Abbott and Costello, because that's obviously going to be next time. Next year, because that's obviously a Frankenstein movie, right? It's going to be in the Frankenstein legacy. So great. Hope you're having a great Halloween weekend, Halloween day at this point. November 2nd. No. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and I will catch you when we continue Dracula Complete Legacy Collection. Bum, 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 bum. With our first non Dracula titled movie, House of Frankenstein. But I'm going to do a double feature, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula. And I'll see if I can tell which one is which after watching it. Okay. That's probably enough of a wrap up. Bye-bye. Anyway. Two drops, that's all I need. 2 drops. Gonna cut this out, not gonna be in the video unless I need it to be something. And it goes, and then. Wait, I shouldn't. Oh, I can't do very, very long of a video. I only have an hour to record. I haven't even posted my Daughter of Dracula in here. I'm talking about Son of Dracula. Okay, do we think. Okay, sorry, plot first. Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome. Oh, shaky camera. Shaky camera. Well, this is not going to work for me, is it? I don't know why I'm still recording.